Good morning from Washington. It's Tuesday, February 18th, 2014. This is the Daily Rundown. I'm Chuck Todd. Let's get right to my first read of the morning. And it's all international. The president arrived back in Washington late last night. Front and center on his agenda continues to be the crisis in Syria, with growing questions about the viability of the current U.S. policy towards that civil war. The administration is privately signaling that it is taking another look at new options, including military, diplomatic, and intelligence issues that are on the table that were all set aside last spring in favor of these Geneva talks. But the talks basically have broken down. Already the administration has stepped up its criticism of Russia's role in the conflict. Secretary of State John Kerry blasted Russia on his way to the Middle East on Monday.
Russia needs to be a part of the solution and not be contributing so many more weapons and so much more aid that they're in fact enabling Assad to double down, which is creating an enormous problem.
Kerry's criticism echoes a sharper tone from the president and White House advisors after Russia signaled last week it would veto a draft UN Security Council resolution which demands that civilians be allowed to leave areas in Syria under siege. And now they call on Assad to allow humanitarian access, raise the prospect of new economic and military sanctions if the resolution's demands aren't met.
Russia is a holdout. They cannot say that they are concerned about the well-being of the Syrian people when they are starving civilians. And that it is not just the Syrians that are responsible, the Russians as well, if they are blocking this kind of resolution.
So you see what the administration is doing right now. This tone marks yet another low point in the U.S.-Russia partnership, if you want to call it that, on Syria, which has consistently eroded since last May when Kerry flew to Moscow and announced an international conference on ending the conflict. Now, Wall Street Journal is reporting that the administration is revisiting plans ranging from expanding efforts to train and equip the moderate rebels to even setting up no-fly zones, which they had said was something that, at the time, back in last August and September, was something that would never be on the table. Meanwhile, assistance could include paying salaries to some of the rebel forces and providing more transportation and intelligence. Now, the White House isn't commenting on any specific option under reconsideration. They don't want to participate in this drumbeat that somehow there's going to be something big, bold, and new. They're actually trying to lower expectations and not put the president in the situation he was put in last September. But both the president and Kerry have signaled in the last several days that they know the current policy isn't working.
There will be some intermediate steps that we can take to apply more pressure to the Assad regime.
It is important for the world to consider in these next days exactly what steps can now be taken in the face of this intransigence that is creating an even greater human catastrophe by the moment.
3 years after the Civil War began, an internal debate continues in the administration on what to do about it, with Kerry among those arguing for more overt pressure on Assad and other advisors worried about the long-term consequences. As The Atlantic's Steve Clemens writes, channeling that more wary point of view, Syrian rebel forces are weak and fragmented, and one of the problems in providing material support to the moderate Free Syrian Army is keeping the Islamist extremists, who are also targeting Bashar al-Assad's regime, from hijacking the aid. The chances are uncomfortably high that those anti-aircraft missiles will one day be turned against American or Western targets. Think Afghanistan from the 70s all over again. Now, Republican critics of the White House are using the stalemate in Syria to argue that the president's foreign policy at large shows weakness.
Syria is a big reason our allies do not trust us, and our adversaries do not fear us. The president violated Lyndon Johnson's maxim that you shouldn't tell a man to go to hell unless you're prepared to send him there.
While there are no good options in Syria in the days ahead, as the president hears from some of his closest advisors, you have to do something. He will have to decide what the least bad option is. One thing the West Wing is trying to manage better on Syria this time is expectations. So far, in response to every report that the White House is reconsidering its Syria policy, the response is something, hey, this is not extraordinary. It's something the president's always doing. Translation, they want a nothing to see here response so they don't get caught up in a new drumbeat for military action. Meanwhile, there's another humanitarian crisis.